All right, welcome everybody. Live from the Crux space here in Brooklyn. My name is Drew Schafering, and today we are going through a haircut that hopefully will kind of shed some light on a shape and an opportunity to take your client's hair short when we're moving back into the salon now. And this shape is this has been a staple of mine for the past probably 5 years of my career. And what we're working with is we've isolated the top above the round of the head, and we're starting and we're working and we're letting a bob shape sit in through the back here. Now, a big part about when we're working on any haircuts, hair types, is really looking at where it's most important to start the haircut. And that's really, you know, if the length needs to be here, it's important to start here. We're starting in the back today because with this bob shape, what we're going for is we're disconnecting this underneath a little bit, and we want this to kind of follow the head shape. And so if we're approaching, setting, working all this hair, as we're starting to work it and cut, we want this to sit in here and create a nice little rounded shape for this top layer to sit on top. So we're working here, following the round of the head, and so that's why it's important to really even take a step and look at it and adjust as we go. So I'm starting in the center here, and I'm going to be sitting down while I'm cutting a little bit today. The idea is that it's going to give you a little bit more of an over-the-shoulder view of what we're doing. So we're starting in the center back. We've isolated everything up top, and we're going to be bringing this section coming in vertically, and we're bringing it down at a 45, and we're cutting a 45. So my elevation is 45 and my cutting angle is 45. Now I'm starting at the top of this section, and we know that it's going to fall and soften as it drops. So the main thing to remember when we're working today is that we're working on the inside, the interior, as well as the shape before we finish the perimeter.
You have a lot of love coming in. You have people from Bulgaria, Romania, California, Australia.
Amazing. Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone's doing safe. All my Bulgarian friends, I miss you. Haven't been there in a few years. California, I'm jealous of you guys in your sunshiny weather all the time, but we're getting a little bit here in New York, so we're not so bad. Now I'm just carrying this through, and I think when we're setting and establishing our guide, we want to make sure to not rush this. I want to keep a consistent line through here, so I even have to manipulate my fingers a little bit and just use just the tips of my fingers so that I can get in tighter towards the nape. And now we see this sitting in a little bit better. So as we keep working forward, we're going to take diagonal forward sections. And the benefit of those is the sections on an angle are going to help hug the head shape, and they're going to help promote that swing in that direction forward. So we're going to pull everything towards the stationary center guide for now. Elevation still 45, cutting 45, and we're just giving a nice soft point cut.
Renee Valerie says hi.
Renee, good morning.
Chicago, Quebec, New York, Brooklyn, Nebraska, Atlanta, Finland, England, Canada.
Whoa, all over the place, guys.
And then Liz is not a hairstylist, but she loves watching, and she's sending love from Brooklyn.
Thank you, Liz. That's so cool. You're not even a hairstylist and you love watching. I think there's something that can be so meditative and therapeutic about watching people cut hair. Thank you for joining, everyone. So we're going to keep working and moving forward. And as we work, we're going to keep kind of turning and checking this profile silhouette. We want this to be sitting in. Now, when we're talking about bobs, and this is like a disconnected graduated bob, this shape right here is everything for setting the tone moving forward. We could set the length here and work backwards. That's a much more advanced approach to it, not always necessary. So for today, we're really just working consistent size sections. Everything's brought back to the heaviest point of the guide. So what that means is my first section was brought back, or it's straight out. The second section was brought back to the first section. Now my third section, if you notice, it's not brought all the way back to the center. If I continue to bring it all the way back to the center, I'm going to get an extreme buildup of length and weight over to this side. So it's more like previous section distribution. But what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the heaviest part of the weight line. If we look here, you can see against that white wall, there's the heaviest part of the weight line right through there. That's really what we're looking for.
So Amir was asking, are you using pivoting sections?
Amir, no. The second section was pivoting. So if we look at our first section in center was here, then that second section is pivoting because it's slightly skinnier at the top, slightly wider at the bottom, which is giving us more of this swing through here. From here forward, they're not pivoting. They're just going to continue working diagonal forward. So we want to be consistent with the sizes of our sections, being mindful that we don't get those kind of waves or ridges in the buildup of length or weight. And I'm working through here, pulling it back. There's the heaviest part of my guideline. I can see through my section. Taking my ring finger and I'm just resting as I point cut up and into my line. So as we're working this, I think it's one of those things that as we get back into, a little bit of a mode of working, I think there's going to be a much higher value placed on quality over quantity moving forward, because we're not going to be able to work as quickly and efficiently. We're going to have to take a little bit more time with the rules and things set in place for safety and health. So I think it's getting back to a place of quality and definite personalization for each client. So I think it's important to kind of take a deep breath and just analyze, just look at everything. Make sure it's looking the way that we want. Take a breath when you have the hair in your hands. Don't be rushing it, trying to just cut.
We have more people from all over the world. I won't even say 100 places. Yvette is here. She says Drew is amazing.
Thank you, Yvette. You're so sweet.
And another person is watching that's not a hairstylist either, but she has a lot of hairdressers in the family and she loves to watch the process.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for popping in, whether you're a hairdresser or not. We appreciate the love and support. So we finished from center back to the left corner, and if you get up and close and look, you can see the buildup of weight and length that we've thrown to this side. So if we turn it, we can see the shape that I'm talking about. We want this head shape to continue to curl and cut in through here. That's why we're starting in the back today. Those of you who've been following along, you know that I've been starting in different places, wherever's most important. Now to create the same effect and go to the other side. So we're stopping at the radial, the spot where the head goes from curved to flat on the side. We're going to match that back here. So the difference is as a right-handed stylist, I cut the left side first. It's my stronger side. It tends to be a little bit easier for us, more natural. This side's the trickier side. It's our less graceful. So a few key things to keep in mind. If you notice, my knuckles were against her neck going that way each time. That's keeping this angle the same. In order to flip that, my fingertips have to be pointing towards her neck. And this is something that a lot of us tend to get easy or get greedy when we pull our fingers towards us, because it makes it for an easier access to that. It's a lighter position. We need to make sure we're keeping our fingertips towards the nape. So we're going to keep working our diagonal forward shape sections, working nice and clean.
Dennis Tuturi was asking, could you just cut this without chipping it? So I'm assuming maybe he means point cutting?
Yeah, so Dennis, you don't have to point cut this. That's a great question. I think I tend to point cut this because the end result is going to have a lot of softness and movement in the ends. And it's just allowing the shape to settle in a little bit more because those lines are not building up too much weight on the bottom of them. So this is the tricky part here. My fingers naturally want to come to me. I have to basically get this hair over in the center at 45. There's my guide right underneath it, ignoring what's happening up here. For those of us that are right-handed, or it doesn't even matter, on your weaker side cutting bobs in graduation, chances are this is the side that gets longer, and it's because your fingertips are not pointed in. It's because they come out just slightly and they produce a little bit more length to the side. So again, we're point cutting today. It's going to give a little bit more of a flutter and a softness towards the ends, but absolutely not necessary. You know, if you wanted to build a stronger shape and build it up a little bit more, we could totally do that. So now again, my distribution, I'm bringing it to the previous section. Fingertips still towards the nape. I'm just following the guide that we worked.
So Dennis said he figured since you were cutting it vertical, it would have been soft anyways.
That's true, Dennis. Yep, good point. And I think, you know, there's so many ways to cut a bob. There's 1,000 ways to cut a bob. This is an approach that I learned several years ago, and it's just stayed true in terms of its blueprint. And essentially what we're doing is we're taking all of the hair below the round of the head. That tends to kind of be the heaviest, bulkiest amount. And we're cutting it at a slightly more elevated length than maybe we would at a 45 instead of bringing it straight down, because this shift when it drops is giving it a little bit more softness and movement. So what that's giving us is, you'll notice the perimeter isn't as clean. We're going to go back in and clean the perimeter up in the final stages.
Sarah Gander is wanting to know, is this video going to be on YouTube, because she missed the beginning and she wants to see how you started?
Sarah, I do not believe it'll be on YouTube, so it's going to be, it'll be on Hairbrain's Facebook page. So even after this is finished, you'll still be able to go back and rewatch it. And then a great tip, if for those of you that like to keep educational videos, rewatch them so that when you go to apply it, you have the questions answered, is if you just go to your phone, and you can do a screen recording on your phone, do a screen recording on your computer, or I believe it will live on Hairbrain's page for quite some time.
And then Lisa is asking, do you always go from the fingertips towards your palm?
Ah, good question. Okay, so if we're here, I tend to work from my fingertips up as opposed to working from here down. And here's why, Lisa. I can get a softer angle working this way, and the hair tends to fall here, so I can get a cleaner way of cutting the hair here. When I go this way, I just find that I get chunkier and I get heavier. It gets a little choppier. So if that's just what works for me. You can do really whatever works for you also.
So Susan made an interesting comment. She said she wishes there were demos with stylists wearing gloves, because she can't imagine what we're in for.
Susan, good point. So I was actually discussing that. I reached out to Courtney with Hairbrain earlier and was asking if that's been addressed, because I would like to, I'd like to do one with gloves. I didn't want to do it today because I haven't actually cut hair with gloves on in quite some time. And so I wanted to, in order to give the most value today, I want to bring the technique and do it correctly, but I am going to be doing things in gloves in the future, because that's the reality we're going to be living in, and we need to address the differences and how to make it work. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so I'm going to take a seat again so that you guys can kind of get a better view of everything happening over my shoulder. So we've cut everything behind in the back half of the head, and you can see the shape. Most of this little stuff that's fluttery through here, we're going to be cutting that off. So we're going to be able to kind of dial in that shape. We're going to continue with diagonal forward sections, working towards the face, and what's going to happen is this last section behind the ear is essentially our corner. We're just bringing everything straight back to that corner. So just straight back from the head, and we're following the guide that we've already cut.
So that might answer Jessica's question. She said, hi from Florida, and she asked if you're using a stationary guideline or a traveling guide.
Hi, Jessica. So we are using a traveling guide. It is it's traveling to the previous section or to the heaviest weight line. And so I will, when I finish this side, I'll do a little diagramming on the head sheets up there for us. But everything here is now stationary. In the back half, it was traveling, but it was previous section. Now it's stationary to really just get as much length here to kind of cover our bases. We want to make sure that we don't get too short up through the front.
And then Maruf is asking how to blend the back. Sometimes it's very dense.
Good, yeah. So Maruk, the back, you're absolutely right. The back of the head is going to be the densest part, especially in the occipital bone area. And so that is part of why we are elevating it and we're disconnecting it a little bit more than the top. And you'll see, stay with us, you'll see when we move to the top, you'll see how we get that softness. Plus, we're going to go in and do some softening and some work to kind of get this, cutting it up into the sections.
So Susan says thank you in response to your future videos with the gloves. And Steven says he often gets a hole at the perimeter when cutting at this point above the ear. What can you do to stop this?
All right, Steven. So the hole is usually created by one of two things. You're going to see we actually might have a small hole here. And nope, today we don't. It's because we have to go back through and finish this perimeter. What happens is the hole happens because the hairline jumps up right here. And if we don't distribute and maintain everything cutting back here so it fills in that gap, or if we cut it too high of an elevation, it will carve out and we'll get that little ear scallop, we'll get that to carve out on accident. So maintaining a low elevation, distributing it away from the ear, so back behind the shoulders, and that's going to keep throwing length towards the face, filling in that hole.
And then Bialy was wondering why you didn't just pull the whole rest of the front section back at once.
You know what, Bialy? It was just to stay clean. You know, what we know to be true about stationary guides is if all of this is coming back here, we can do it all at once anyway. What I know to be true about wet hair is wet hair groups together, doesn't it? And so it's like it groups together, it becomes a little bit harder to cut a soft line the more you have. If this was a dry haircut, we were doing dry, it'd be much easier to go in and create that softness, but on wet hair it's a little bit more challenging.
And then Sky is wanting to know when you cut, what is the head position, looking down or straight?
So now we're going to be having her straight so we can work. And it's not as important, you know, that it's one way or another. It's what works for you and it's consistent. So in the beginning, we had her head down so we can work this shape in a little bit easier. Now, I want to make sure that my elevation's where I want. So I'm kicking her head over just slightly so that this panel's a little bit easier for us. So I'm not up here. I know where I'm going to be. And it's just making it consistent. So even if her head is down, I'm still cutting the same angle and guide based off from the back. It's not until we really refine the perimeter that it's going to be super important for us to be really spot on with that. Good questions.
And then Lisa wants to know where you're located.
Lisa, I am in Brooklyn. Right now we are in the Crux space in Brooklyn, New York. And this is home base, and then travel around the US and the globe doing advanced workshops, shows, shoots, all of that stuff. So keeping things moving forward towards the front hairline. And again, taking smaller sections for control and precision, just making sure that we're staying nice and saturated with the hair. I remisted with a leave-in conditioner that I love from L'Oreal Professional. And now we're just keeping it nice and soft. So Bialy, to your point, we could take all of this hair in front of the ear all at once. But what I know is that it's a little bit trickier to get a soft line with a lot of wet hair. So we're just kind of taking our time and breathing with it.
So Yvette was giving you some love earlier and saying that you explain in such detail the whys behind what you're doing, and it gets everyone inspired to want to start cutting everyone's hair.
Yvette, cheers for that. You're a sweetie.
And then Vincenzo says, where Brooklyn... Oh, he said, where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at?
That's what's up, Vincenzo. Where Brooklyn at? Big ups to Brooklyn, right? All right. So here's something that, you know, I speak a lot about these combs. I love these combs. It's the only essential comb that I use from Crux. And when we're working, it's so easy for our fingers to lie to us. Every time I get set up for a section, my comb finds my angle and my fingers find my guide. And then that way it just, my fingers just kind of mimic and follow my comb. Our fingers start to do things to make our lives easier, but it's not making the haircut any better. It just is ergonomically more correct. So our fingers will start to do this, they'll change. So really utilizing this longer comb makes it a lot easier. I see it, establish it, and just follow through.
And Terry's wondering what the length of your scissor is and what kind of scissor you recommend for point cutting.
Terry, you know, these are 5.5, and these are from a brand that actually no longer makes them anymore. They're just a pair of mine that I enjoy using. I think You can point cut. I would say I wouldn't point cut with anything too crazy long. I've gone through different periods of my career of using different lengths, and I always found that the longer shears were great for condensed, a lot of hair cutting, almost like the way gardening shears work. The more steel you have, the more power you have. But for really refining shapes, I find that the shorter scissors really help out a little bit better. So these are a 5.5. That might be big for some, but it also depends on the shape of it. You want it to be on the skinnier, more pointed side. You don't want anything too fat and cumbersome.
Sarah says she loves the way that you answer all the questions. Thank you so much. And then Suzanne says watching you is making her miss her work. Hi from Scotland.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you guys for all the comments and questions. And hopefully you won't be missing your work too much longer, right? We'll all be getting back into it.
And Susan's wanting to know what's the name of your comb.
Susan, the comb is from Crux brand. So I actually, for watching today, for the next 48 hours, Nina, if you give a look at that, we added a coupon discount code for all of you for 20% off the site, just everything on the site wide. It's good for 24 hours or 48 hours. The Crux brand combs, I like to use the white. Again, it's a long comb. It's not for, if you take like tons of tiny sections and you don't like using a larger comb, this is a challenging one for you. But I actually made the switch from using really small combs, and I've kind of adapted, and this allows me to just use this and be able to work with any hair type, any amount of hair, any density. They're made of carbon fiber and nylon, so they're heat resistant. They have a good durability through the nylon, and then they have a matte finish, so they're not slippery. And I'm really anxious to start cutting with gloves on with these because they already have a matte finish, so they don't slip. Now with the gloves, I'm anxious to see how it feels with it because it already has such a secure feel to it in the hands. Okay, so we've cut the entire bottom, and we're going to let that sit. We're not going to worry about it for now. So now we are going to, oh, I promised I would do this. Let me grab a marker. Okay. We're going to go over to the head sheet real quick. So for those of you that may have tuned in a minute late, or we just need this to help kind of visualize, this is our initial sectioning, isolating everything above the round of the head. And if you feel the parietal ridge up through here, we're following that ridge and then how it drops down just above the occipital bone. It's not a true horizontal horseshoe. We're enveloping this lower crown area around of the head as well. And we started here with vertical section, and then we pivoted and went to previous section distribution until we got to behind the ear at the radial. Then this section, the last section, became our guide, and everything was brought to the stationary guide, following that same angle that we established back here. So very simple, straightforward. Again, we're working with a 45-degree elevation, slightly more than we may be used to. And that's to allow for the softness, for the hair to collapse a little bit and fall a little bit softer for us. So moving on, let's just get rid of some of this.
Susan said that was exactly what they needed.
Perfect.
Love on
Good.
the head sheet.
All right, so we're gonna take and go through, and we're gonna create actually, we're gonna do this. We're gonna split it from ear to ear first, because we're gonna work in the back half. So let's just split it right down the middle, just get it nice and controlled. And we're gonna cut the back half first, and then we're gonna work the front.
Sonia wishes you were her teacher in hair school. And Shauna says same.
You guys are so sweet. Well, we can still work together now, right? Where are you from? What schools did you guys go to, or ladies go to? So as we isolate this hair in front, just clipping that up and away. And it's important that we, sorry about the noise everyone, if you can hear that. Good old Brooklyn trucks, business still as usual. So we're isolating the hair where it's going to fall in the back half of the head, really making sure that we include it and cut it where it's going to be living and not creating a new place for it to be. And now we're going to repeat very similar sections that we had from the below section. So we're going to start at center with a profile. So nice and clean, just working with a profile section through here. And then Nina, I want you to stay right there, look over my shoulder, because this is when we determine how much length we add to the top versus the bottom. So what will happen is if we connect the bottom underside and start cutting right there, this is going to fall and sit on top of that layer. And so we're going to have a gradual shape that's just stacking on top of itself. Instead, for today, what this is going to allow us to do is we're going to go past that guide at least an inch, inch and a half, right there. So there's the guide right here. Now I'm cutting out here. So it's about a thumb's inch. I'm going to go even a little bit farther. And we're pulling the hair straight out from the head. And I'm going to go through, and instead of point cutting, bless you. Instead of point cutting, I'm going to do my slicing motion that we've been working on. Bless you. So I still have my length established. I'm making my peace sign. There's my guide from below. I'm going to go at least an inch past that. Triple clamp so I get my tension. And now I'm going to slice that length off. So you can see we're getting much more texture through here. I'm going to keep working up the head shape, going from shorter underneath to longer. And by the time we get to the top, we are continuing to get longer, working towards the face. So now let's stop and let's look at this section and see how we're doing.
Thank you to everyone saying bless you. I appreciate it. Allergies.
So if we take a look at this and if we kind of get close in there, we can see this bit is overhanging the shortest layers in this graduation. So they're just slightly longer and it's helping it cup under and sit within that shape. So what we're doing is we're essentially eliminating a decent amount of the bulk of the hair that gets stuck back here, and it usually makes these shapes billow out and kind of too much shape back here. We're allowing it to collapse by giving that extra inch that's going to hang over that section. So now we're going to keep working in that same fashion, just vertical sections brought into stationary guide here. And again, working with a stationary guide, we could bring all of this hair in at once. But what we know to be true is it's going to be softer if we take slightly smaller sections and control them.
Robert Gonzalez says, hi Drew from DC. He enjoys watching and likes your clean sectioning and how well you explain everything.
Robert, how are you, man? It's good to hear you, see you kind of, but glad you're here. Thanks for saying hi and appreciate the words, my friend. I hope DC is treating you well.
And Carmen is an instructor and she loves your class.
Cheers, Carmen. Thank you for that. Where do you teach at? Where are you instructor at, Carmen? So continuing, same sections, my guide's still through here. So we're pulling everything straight to center guide. And again, for those of you that maybe haven't seen it in the past, this triple clamp here, what that allows me to do is relax. I've established my tension and my elevation here. And then it's really allowing me to get in and create more texture in the ends of the hair here. Definitely disrupting it, creating more movement and softness through the ends. And we could go through and cut it blunt and then soften it, or go through and point cut it and soften it, but this is just a way of working through the hair a little bit more aggressive from the beginning. So you can see we're going to end up cutting the excess off through here. So we're not worried about that. We're going to be in good shape. Now let's switch, go to the other side. Same thing.
Lisa said when she gets her hair cut like this, her girl uses a razor. What's the difference in your way and the razor cut?
You know what, Lisa? The biggest difference between a razor and scissors is a razor can cut weight and length out of hair at the same time a bit differently than scissors can. With scissors, we really can only work here, or we can work in the inside out, similar to a razor. But the beauty of a razor is we can kind of carve and really take more weight out at the same time. So it's a subtle difference, and it's really just depends on, honestly, the day of the week. Sometimes as a hairstylist, we will want to use a razor because it's a little bit more of a sculpting type feeling as opposed to, you know, working with lines. And also depends on the hair texture, the hair type. But you could absolutely do this technique, this haircut, with a razor.
So you have a few people saying they love the way you explain and teach. Terry liked the triple clamp. And
cheers, Terry.
you have love coming in from Amish, Pennsylvania. And then Amy says that what you're doing is exactly, or she says, that's exactly what they do wrong with my thick hair all the time. I need you to cut this craziness.
We can make that happen, Amy. Where do you live, Amy? We can, we'll talk about when we can get back to work about getting together and cutting it for you. So you can see that these extremes that were brought all the way to the middle, we're not worried about that. That's all going to be cut off. We're just looking here at the shape and with what's going on. So again, taking a step to the side and looking at the profile of it. Like the shape's sitting in really, really nicely. We haven't even done much texturizing and dry work. Now we're going to continue working in through the front, carrying that line going longer. This is going to continue getting longer. We'll go through and clean that up and do some detailing. So this is great, guys. Keep the questions coming. We will continue with the flip chart in a second as well.
Amir's asking, do you have any recommendations for good quality shampoos and conditioners?
Oh, Amir, you know what? There's loads of good quality shampoo and conditioner. I think, you know, whether you stay with a brand or whether you problem solve, you know, L'Oreal Professional, Shumura, Hairstyles, those are all some of my go-tos. And depending on your hair type, hair texture, hair density, or your needs, you know, I think each one of those lines has a portfolio that would kind of suit you. But it's a, in general, I think if you stay with one of those three lines, you're going to be in good shape.
Amy says, you're too far away, sadly. Love from Quebec. We'll go there.
Yeah, we'll take a road trip, Amy. Okay, so now what I'm doing is just isolating another section at center, the same way that we did in the back. So the same section here, did the same section in the crown, now we're doing the same section in the front. So very much trying to simplify and not overcomplicate the sectioning. And we're going to bring this guide from the center back, and we're going to bring enough of it so we can kind of get a gauge on our line. And what we'll find is, the idea is we just want to continue going shorter to longer. It's not so much about cutting a strong line. We're cutting a rounded, shorter to longer shape that's going to be in unison with this round shape that we're working.
Stephanie says, yay, more Drewcation. And then she asked, what's the name of the cut that you're doing? Shaggy A-line?
This would be a disconnected, graduated bob. I like that, Drewcation. I haven't heard that before.
And then Sandra's wondering, are there any types of shears that you recommend?
Sandra, you know, there's loads of good shears. I love, I'm a fan of Kasho because I learned with Kasho. I also, you know, Mizutani makes some great shears. Hikari does. Gerard just released a special shear. I don't remember the name of it. It's a great price point. I think it's made by the same factories that make some of the top stuff. And I think it's like around $350. And so I don't think you have to spend a ton of money to get a good quality pair of shears. You're more than welcome to, but it's just not necessary. So I would give the Hairbrained line that just launched. I think it's like one of their first pair of shears on their pro website, right at the top.
Amy says that watching this is just as satisfying as getting her haircut.
Thank you, Amy.
And
hope you're pulling up a glass of wine or something with it.
yeah. And Bialy says that they're always struggling with the fringe. Please help.
Well, fringe is a whole, you know, we could do a whole week, month of discussing fringes. But you know, I think depending on the hair texture, fringes are going to be different. We're going to put a fringe in with her, so we'll go through a few things. So to give you perspective, now I'm on my last, pulling all of this hair, each section bringing up into this stationary guide. So each section brought up and in, and we're continuing to cut from the back, from our guide that we had in the crown, longer, shorter in the back to longer in the front. So this is, again, another thing I love about these longer, bigger combs, is I can bring all of this hair up and in and really control it fluidly. The more comb I have, the more power I have behind it. And you know, I spent years working with every type of comb imaginable. I was working with the Sessibon, the YS Park. I spent all my money on my tools because they were like toys. And when I was creating some curriculum for an advanced academy here in New York, realizing that as students and as artists and as hairstylists, we learn with the tools we are working with. So many stylists were misusing their combs, and they had combs that weren't allowing them to be most efficient. And that's when I realized that this essential classic cutting comb, very London-based shape, is just, it really works the best for me with everything I do. And I use this from men's to women's to long to curly to short. The only thing I don't use this for is with barbering. I use a slightly smaller one, but it's coming in handy with this.
We have a lot of questions coming in about where people can find some more of your work, your teaching, your website, questions of if you have a YouTube channel and if you have shops in New York. So lots of questions about you.
Yeah, okay, so I have a website and it's currently being reworked a bit. I didn't give it enough time and love in the past few years. Just been working on my portfolio and shooting a lot. So drewschaefringhair.com or drewschaefring.com is going to be up and live soon. And there you'll be able to find more of my work, my photos, in addition to some videos. And I've been working on my video editing skills and really getting some more content out for all of you. So there's a little bit on my YouTube page. It's Drew Schaefring. Hopefully much more to come soon. And let's see, what else were we asking about?
Just where they can find more of your work. Do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, so YouTube channel is Drew Schaefring. If you go over to Instagram, that's kind of like a running portfolio. And then as well as a lot of my work is on Crux brand as well, the website and the Instagram. So a few different platforms, kind of all over the place, and we're tightening it up and hopefully bringing you more and more every day.
And then someone had asked if you have a shop in New York, and then Stephanie said she just ordered your combs and the leather carrier, and she's juiced.
Stephanie, amazing. I can't wait for you to get the leather, the vertier. I've been told I overuse the word sexy with it, because to me it's just a sexy bag, and to me that's just what it screams. So I'm so excited for you to get that and start playing with it. I'd love to see how you pack yours and use it.
And I just wanted to know what your sectioning is in the front.
Okay, so let's do this, Anne. So what we did is after we worked through the bottom, we then isolated the top with a radial, and we worked the crown the exact same way we did the bottom. The only difference is this was a stationary guide with every section brought here. We used the bottom as a guide to length. So this is this, and we went 1.5 inches longer than it, and we went from shorter to longer with our point cutting, or we sliced into it, so we got a lot more of a piecier, airy chop to it. We kept that same sectioning again, working through here. The difference is this is stationary guide. This was previous section. So there's more of a buildup of length and weight towards the outside of these corners than there was here. This is hugging, this is throwing more length over. Now when we get into the front half, it's the exact same as this section. So stationary guide, all sections go right into that. And we just continued with that shorter to longer towards the face. So now what we've done is we've cut all of the length and the shape. And now we want to look at how the shape's kind of starting to pan out, right? Because the great thing about bobs is they have that soft movement, they have a lot of swing to them, and we can see where everything's starting to come in, knowing that the excess is going to be cut off, right? So let's do this. Let's put a fringe on her. And that will get rid of a bit of excess length that's distracting us. So let's come through center profile section. And again, the further back we go, the more the client's going to have to really pull that hair and slide it forward and style it forward every day. So we want to go 2 curvatures of the head, not too much farther back to keep it natural. And we're going to go 2 diagonals out to the cheekbone, the corner of the eye through here. So we're going to make it a little bit wider to open this up. We have a cool little art makeup deco situation happening. We want to open it up. So we're going to bring all of this down and repeat on the opposite side.
So Kimberly was asking what your last name is, and then I noticed Bialy wrote Schaefer. It's actually Schaefering. I don't know if you want to spell it for them.
Yeah, you know what? I will. I'll write it up here on a piece of paper for all of you.
And then Bialy says Drewcation. You're getting a lot of Drewcation.
I don't know. You guys might be bargaining for more than what you can with that. Drewcation, I like it.
And Shauna loves that you draw diagrams and explain it. That's how they learned that.
It is so true. Thank you for saying that, Shauna. You know, we get into here, and sometimes we forget that this is really the blueprint. This is just the application. So my last name, I'll write it up here for you. Schaefering. And Drew, yeah. Okay. So now we're going to take and we're going to create a fringe on her that's going to open up, but we don't want it to be straight across through here. We're going to have it be a little bit more beveled. So we're going to work it in 3 sections because it's hard to cut a beveled line all in one swoop. So to make it easy, we're going to start in the center. And we're going to work that, and we're going to just kind of pick our length. And we don't need to break this section up into multiple sections. We're going to go about the bridge of the nose. And so here's another trick with my comb. Let your comb find your angle. That's your straight marker. These are going to always be tricking us. Mimic your comb. There we go. I'm going to use my ring finger, balance my scissors on, and I'm just going to cut a nice soft line straight across.
Christina says the doll eye looks real. It looks like it's looking at her.
That was a last-minute ad by Nina. So if you guys are loving the doll, show some love and show Nina some love with that. She's been having some fun with creating these. There we go. That's starting to come in nicely. So I always tend to go longer on the fringes. And we took that section straight across. Now we want it to kind of bend down. So now what we're going to do is combing everything in natural fall where it lives. We're going to direct from our guide here down to the cheekbone. So again, using light tension, we don't want this hair to pop up. My comb's finding my angle, going from our guide to the cheekbone. Nice and easy, using my ring finger, nice and soft, and just point cut that there. And it's okay if you miss a section or if there's like a big chunk like that. That's why we're here. We just breathe, go back in it, nice and soft. And there we go. So now we have a little bit more of an arc to that. And let's repeat that on the same opposite side now. So pulling the hair down where it lives. We don't want to be directing this over here. We want to cut it where it lives. Guide, cheekbone, fingers match our comb. And there we go. So that got rid of a big chunk of the longest hair that was brought up here. So now it's even easier to see the shape that's going to be sitting in through.
Thank you guys for the love coming in on the face. And then Terry's asking, should she diagram every client's cut? Do you do it or just for teaching?
You know what, Terry? I think I only do it for teaching. I used to diagram every client's cut, and I felt that it was a bit cumbersome. And I also feel like as you do more and more, you kind of start to know your own work, and you kind of have a few haircuts that you just work with all the time, so you don't need to diagram it every time. But much like color formulas, it's not a bad idea if that's going to help you. You know, everything works differently for all of us. So I'm going to kind of power dry her quickly so that we can get into some of the texturizing before we wrap. And what I'm doing is I'm using a Vess 9-row Demon brush, great for controlling the hair, high heat, high speed with the Dyson. And we're just going to pretend like my hands are handcuffed together. So I'm just going to be going back and forth. And we don't want to just go in and blow this hair everywhere. We want to have some nice control over it, getting it nice and smooth.
Angela was wondering about your fringe section. Is that how you would do a swoop fringe?
Angela, so I would not do a swoop fringe like that. I think, you know, if we had a fringe that was heavy to one side, I would take slightly different sections and create a stationary guide over the short eye, pull it all over and cut it so that it fell swooping that way. And then of course, you could be layering it, it could be softer, all those different options could be into play.
If you don't want such a heavy fringe, could you have a more shallow section?
You could do a more shallow section, you could layer it, you could soften it and point cut it deeper. Great question. A lot of options that we could do with it.
Stephanie said the cut has great movement.
Thank you, Stephanie. You know, sometimes it's hard to check and see what a haircut's going to be, you know, living like when it's wet. But it always does feel good when you can tell it's looking good when it's wet, because you know it's just going to get better as it dries. Nope. So as I'm blow drying, notice my hands are working together. I'm not sitting here with the air in one spot and just brushing. I'm working nice and slow. So maximizing the time that the heat is on the hair, but I'm not burning the client or I'm not overworking the hair. I'm keeping it moving. It's not even hurting my arm. So nice and fluid. What was the question?
Susan had asked earlier, are there any haircuts that you recommend for thin hair? So I'm not sure if she was referencing this haircut in specific, or if you have any recommendations if someone has thin hair for a thin haircut.
So, you know, I think with thin hair, you know, we want to create the illusion of more density and more thickness. And so I would say, you know, be careful with layering thin hair. Really be mindful of the shape and the volume. And then also just the ends. You know, sometimes the hair is going to look thicker and fuller with heavy edges, but then there's also times where hair looks thicker and fuller if it has a slightly more serrated or textured edge, because it gives the illusion of more hair moving around.
We always love your handcuff analogy for blow drying. Elton can't wait for the end result. Susan loves her Dyson. And she bought the Dyson flat iron before the salon was closed and hasn't been able to use it yet.
Oh no. I actually just got a Dyson Corral the other day. I can't wait to play with it. I'm going to be doing another video with them, I believe, in the near future. So stay tuned for that, because I'm excited to play with that and see you know, how that's going to change our lives in the salon as well.
Suzanne said you are so good.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm happy that you're liking it and you're getting value out of it. So just looking to kind of get this, you know, a little smoother. We're not trying to collapse it. We could go through with a flat iron and really sleek it out and make it, you know, have some high polish, but we just want to control and collapse the shape and get a nice round feel. We don't want to make it too stick straight. And then with the fringe, just kind of get that down nice and easy. And I used no product on this, guys. The only thing I used was a good leave-in conditioner, multi-purpose, the 10-in-1 from Loyal Professional, and it just keeps that nice slip to it, and it keeps the hair working nice as we keep cutting. So now let's finish it up. So we're going to go through and we're going to start in the back, and we're going to point cut. So what we don't want to do is come through with a horizontal line on something that's all soft for us. So we're going to get the head nice and straight up, looking down, and we're just going to point cut all of this excess and lock in the perimeter. So all of these little hairs, these all fell out because we cut the elevation or the graduation at a higher elevation. So when it fell, it shifted this hair out. Now we're just cutting and detailing all of this. You could do this with thinning shears. You know, it'd take a little bit more time, but it would be even more soft, even a little bit more blurred. You could do this with a feather razor. And I'm going to square this off a little bit. You know, we kept that length and everything. I'm going to take it and go a little bit more square. So I'm just going to use my comb, light tension. And again, another reason why I love working with these larger combs. Just makes it a lot easier to control and work with significant amounts of hair for me. So we want to make sure that's nice and soft. So cutting in, making sure that we're not going too fast, being too greedy, and creating any heavy shapes in there. Same thing, flipping it. So we want to make sure that we're pressing it on the skin, that we're not elevating, not creating any new layers into it.
You have a lot more love on your way of teaching. You said your videos are very cool and informative.
Cheers, guys.
So now she says, "What's up?"
Hey, Michael. Thanks for joining, buddy. Appreciate you.
And then Angela says she's seeing more square these days.
Yeah, you know, I think we're seeing less of the big inverted shapes where it's, you know, significantly longer in front. I think that there's always going to be a complementary element to leaving some length and, you know, a heavier shine or line towards the face. But I think, you know, as with trends kind of move and things come and go, we're just in a stage of keeping things a little bit more square and less aeon flux or inverted. So keeping working all of this. And again, I'm bringing this back behind the hair, behind the face, because that's where she's going to wear it. She's not going to wear it over in front of her face, so I don't want to cut it up here. I want to cut it back here. Just make sure that's nice and soft. All right, now let's see how on we are. I feel like so we need to go a bit shorter on this side.
And then we have another question on what size shears you're using.
So yeah, these shears are a 5.5. No particular reason. It's not like they're the only size shear that I work with. These are just the ones I happen to pick up today. And I tend to use somewhere in between the 5.5 and 6 every time. I don't really steer too far from that. I feel like the longer blades just aren't for me. I've tried them. How are we doing on time, Nina? 1:55. Okay, great. So in the last 5 minutes, I'm going to show you how to keep working and soften everything that we've done. If your client was really, in through the occipital where we softened and layered this, we can go in, take everything above the occipital or above the parietal that we left longer, and we could keep going in and just do some nice parallel point cutting, collapse this shape even more, and really make sure that this sits in nice and pretty for this top to hang over and it doesn't get too bulky. So to do that, we would just take the same sections we did for the haircut. Same respect for the shape. We don't want to go against and ruin anything that we've already done. Just instead of cutting the length off when we pull it out, we're just softening. Just staying nice and parallel, only closing the shear on the way out. So you can see that's collapsing it a little bit more. Now let's work into the crown. Same idea, so same sections. We'll start with our profile that we worked in the crown. Now what we're going to do is we are going to pull this out, and you can see this is our guide from below. This is how much longer we went. We're going to start to texturize at the length of that shorter guide. So I did my slicing earlier to actually cut the length. Now I'm going in and slicing to create more of a loose, light, airy feel through this top.
Gretchen says you're a great educator. Betty says you've been very interesting. Pamela loves seeing hairstylists make magic.
Thank you all.
So lots of love.
Cheers for all of that. Thank you for the support and love. Again, my triple clamp is allowing me to go through and soften all of this. I have a good grip on it, plus it's going to ensure that I keep the same elevation and tension, as well as it's not going to be pulling on her scalp at all. So what can happen is with this slicing method, when we go through, if I don't have these two sections here with a strong grip, when we work going inside out, sometimes the scissors can just catch a little bit. And there's a smooth motion that happens when we do this. And when it's not as smooth, it can pull and catch the hair, and that's really kind of unpleasant for the client. So we want to make sure that we minimize that as much as possible. All right, so I'm going to finish this last section in the back, and then we'll move to the top, and we're going to be in good shape. So I know we're running down into the last few moments. I want to thank, as I keep working, just thank all of you for tuning in, for showing up, showing some love. Really appreciate you. Invite you to take advantage of the 20% off with Crux brand if you haven't had a chance to try any of the tools or the gear. Right now what we're doing is we're taking this time that we have, call it a refocus time, and we're also looking at what products, tools, what's going to be next for us. So if you have any ideas for something you would love to see more of, give us a shout. Let me know what you'd like to see. We have a few things in the works. And again, just staying nice and calm, just filtering out some of that weight with our slicing method. Using the wide teeth of the comb, coming up my peace sign, I grab it, triple clamp, fingertips towards the ground, and just go through and filter some of that weight out. All right. So obviously we could go through, continue to texturize, continue to cut more and more and more. Each client's head's going to be different. Approaching it with wet hair to begin with today is giving us a little bit more control over the shape and with how it worked. Refining it when it's dry, and we could even come in through here and take off these little corners if we don't like that, if that's too heavy, personalize some of the fringe. And this is when the artistry and your own creative vibe comes in. If there's really no right or wrong, the shape's all in there, it's all up to you. So again, thank you guys so much for joining. My name is Drew Schafering here from the Crux Space in Brooklyn, New York. Please show some love, follow myself on Instagram, Facebook, at Drew Schafering, as well as Crux Brand on Instagram. And for the next 48 hours for watching, as a thank you, 20% off site-wide at cruxbrand.com. Send me a message, comment below if you found this useful, you showed some love with it. Thank you to Hairbrain for having the platform, and look forward to seeing you guys soon. Be well.